At my son's funeral, his wife blamed me for his death, then demanded I leave my own home. She even waived the deed, claiming Daniel had secretly transferred it to her. I stood there, silent, watching my world crumble, yet a quiet determination began to simmer. This is my story of losing everything and finding the strength to reclaim it. Please like, share, and let me know where you are listening from. The shrill insistence of the telephone ripped me from a fitful sleep. It was 2:17 a.m., a time reserved for emergencies, or perhaps for the end of a world. I fumbled for the receiver, my heart already a frantic drum against my ribs. Hello? My voice, thick with sleep and premonition, barely audible. Mrs. Vance? This is Officer Reynolds from the County Sheriff's Department. The voice was calm, professional, but beneath it lay a tone I immediately recognized. The harbinger of irreparable loss. I'm calling about your son, Daniel Vance. My breath hitched. Is he all right? What happened? A pause, heavy and final. Mrs. Vance, I'm so sorry to inform you that Daniel was involved in a drunk driving accident earlier this evening. He didn't make it. The words hit me not as a blow, but as a silent, invisible force that shattered everything. The world outside the window, the soft glow of the digital clock, even the air I breathed, seemed to fragment into a million tiny, sharp pieces. Daniel, my Daniel, gone. 38 years old, my only child, the boy I had brought into this world, nurtured and loved with every fiber of my being. Just gone. The phone slipped from my numb fingers, clattering to the floor. I stood there in the dark, a 3-year-old woman, feeling the raw, visceral pain of a mother whose child has been ripped away. The grief was a physical entity, a crushing weight that stole my breath and left me gasping in the suffocating silence of my once familiar home. The days that followed were a blur of muted colors and hushed voices. People came and went, offering condolences that sounded hollow, patting my arm with sympathetic gestures that felt alien. I moved through it all as if in a thick fog, the world around me distant and indistinct. The funeral was a solemn, agonizing affair. I remember little beyond the unbearable weight of the casket, the scent of lilies, and the collective sorrow of those who knew Daniel. My son, vibrant and full of life just days ago, was now an unimaginable absence, a gaping void in the fabric of my existence. My world, as I knew it, lay in ruins around my feet. It was back at the house, amidst the lingering smell of funeral flowers and the hushed murmurs of the few remaining mourners, that the real nightmare began. Vivian, Daniel's wife, had been a glacial presence throughout the service. She hadn't cried, not a single tear. Her face a mask of cold composure that unnerved me. As the last of the distant relatives departed, leaving just the two of us in the echoing silence of the living room, she turned to me. Her eyes, usually a pale blue, seemed devoid of color, like chips of ice. "This is your fault," she said, her voice flat, devoid of any warmth or grief. I stared at her, dumbfounded. "My fault? Vivian, what are you talking about?" The pain of Daniel's loss was still a fresh, bleeding wound, and her words twisted the knife deeper. "If you hadn't always been here," she continued, gesturing around the familiar space of my home, a house I had lived in for 40 years, he wouldn't have felt so pressured. He needed his own space, his own life. But you were always clinging. Her words were a cruel reminder of her long-standing resentment, a quiet tension that had always simmered beneath the surface of our forced cohabitation. When Daniel and Vivian had married 5 years ago, they moved into this very house. My house. Daniel had explained it was a temporary measure to save money, a practical solution. I, of course, had welcomed them, trying my best to make Vivian feel at home, to give them their space while still being present. But Vivian had always bristled. The house was too small, she'd often complained. Her tone implying my presence was what made it small. My antique furniture was old-fashioned. My well-loved garden was too much work. She had never truly settled, always making me feel like an intruder in my own home. "Vivian, this is my home," I began, my voice trembling with a mixture of grief and indignation. "I bought this house." She cut me off, her gaze piercing. It holds too many bad memories now. You need to leave. My jaw dropped. The audacity, the sheer coldness of her demand, even as Daniel's scent still lingered in the air. Leave? Where would I go? This is my house. Eleanor. My son grew up here. No, she stated, her voice dangerously calm. This isn't your house anymore. Daniel told me he paid the mortgage, the utilities, everything. For years. He always said he was taking care of it, that it was his. Her lips thinned into a triumphant line. So, by extension, it's mine now. A cold dread began to seep into my bones, a feeling more chilling than the grief. That's not true. Daniel helped. Yes, but the deed is in my name. I bought it, Vivian. I remembered the deed, safely tucked away in the old metal strongbox in my bedroom closet, alongside other important papers. I hurried to my room, my heart pounding with a new, terrifying fear. I pulled the strongbox out, my hands fumbling with the clasp. Inside, the usual stack of documents: my will, my birth certificate, old photos. But the deed, the large, official-looking document with my name printed clearly on it, was gone. I tore through the box, then through the entire closet, pulling out every file, every loose paper. Nothing. The panic surged, a violent wave crashing over me. It couldn't be, it simply could not be gone. As I stood there, disheveled and frantic, Vivian appeared in the doorway, a ghost of a smile playing on her lips. In her hand, she held a folded stack of papers. My eyes immediately fixated on the distinctive legal paper. The deed. And beneath it, a sheaf of mortgage documents. Looking for these, Eleanor? She asked, a cruel edge to her voice. She waved them gently. Daniel transferred them. Everything. To his name. He did it a few months ago, said it was for future planning. Smart man. My knees buckled, and I sank onto the edge of my bed. Transferred? Daniel wouldn't. He couldn't. My own son, my loving boy, would never betray me like this. But the evidence was right there, in Vivian's cold, triumphant hand. A meticulous, calculated betrayal that had happened under my very nose. You have two choices, Eleanor, Vivian said, stepping further into the room, her voice now filled with a chilling authority. You can fight me in court, spend every last penny you have, and lose. Or, you can pack your bags and be out of this house by Friday morning. 3 days. Your choice. 3 days. 3 days to abandon a lifetime. 3 days to leave the only home I had ever truly known as an adult. 3 days to become homeless, at 63. The ultimatum hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I had less than $400 to my name, saved meticulously from my meager retirement. My mind raced, trying to find a way out, a loophole, anything. The next 3 days were a blur of desperation. I called every legal aid number I could find, only to be met with long waiting lists or the cold reality of fees I couldn't afford. Each lawyer I spoke to painted a grim picture. Without my own copy of the deed, without any concrete proof of fraud, and with Daniel gone, proving ownership would be an uphill, costly battle. I reached out to distant cousins, old friends, anyone I thought might offer a helping hand, but everyone was either too far away, too financially strapped themselves, or simply too overwhelmed to offer more than sympathetic words. The crushing truth settled in. I was utterly alone. Friday morning dawned gray and merciless. I moved through the house like a phantom, my heart a heavy stone in my chest. Each item I touched, each memory sparked, was a fresh wound. My life, meticulously built over decades, was now reduced to what could fit into 2 well-worn suitcases and a flimsy shopping bag. Clothes, a few beloved books, a faded photograph of Daniel as a boy, a small jewelry box containing the last vestiges of my family's heirlooms. Vivian stood in the kitchen doorway, sipping her coffee, watching me. Her gaze was chillingly detached, like an observer at a theatrical performance. Not a flicker of empathy, no trace of regret, just a cold, calculating satisfaction. I avoided her eyes, refusing to give her the satisfaction of seeing my tears. Finally, with a deep, shaky breath, I pulled my meager belongings to the front door. The latch clicked open, and I stepped out onto the porch, then onto the cracked sidewalk of the street I had called home for 40 years. The morning sun, usually a welcome sight, felt harsh and unforgiving. I turned, taking one last look at the house, the familiar green door, the climbing rosebush I had tended for years. It no longer felt like mine. It was a stranger's house now, occupied by a stranger. The front door clicked shut behind me, the sound echoing the finality of my situation. Standing on the pavement, with nowhere to go, and less than $400 to my name, the realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. This wasn't a sudden outburst of grief-fueled anger. This was planned. Vivian had meticulously orchestrated this moment, waiting for Daniel's death to discard me, just like unwanted garbage. At 63, I was invisible, without a home, without a son, without anything. But as the first stirrings of despair threatened to consume me, a faint, stubborn spark ignited deep within. Invisible, perhaps, but not powerless. Not yet. The first night was the cruelest. I found myself drawn, almost instinctively, to Riverside Park, a place brimming with ghosts of happier times. Daniel and I used to come here often. We'd feed the ducks, toss a frisbee, or simply sit on a bench, sharing stories and laughter. Now, a different kind of memory was being forged. The park bench, hard and cold beneath my aching back, was my bed. Every rustle of leaves, every distant siren, sent a jolt of fear through me. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford. My mind raced, replaying Vivian's words, Daniel's imagined betrayal, and the overwhelming emptiness of my new reality. The air grew chill as the hours crawled by, and I pulled my thin jacket tighter, shivering not just from the cold, but from a profound, terrifying loneliness. My new routine quickly cemented itself into a grim existence. Each morning, before the park became too crowded, I would make my way to the public restrooms. The harsh, fluorescent lights exposed every crevice of my despair. I'd splash cold water on my face, trying to scrub away the grime and the exhaustion, comb my tangled hair with my fingers, and meticulously adjust my wrinkled clothes, clinging to the desperate hope of maintaining some semblance of my former self. I wanted to appear put together, not like the homeless woman I had become. It was a futile effort, a daily battle against the inevitable. Despite my desperate attempts, the transformation was relentless and unforgiving. The clothes I wore day in and day out, unwashed, began to carry a faint, sour smell that I tried to ignore but knew others must detect. My once neat gray hair became a matted mess, stubbornly refusing to be tamed by my fingers. My skin grew dry and rough, my eyes constantly red-rimmed from lack of sleep and relentless worry. Each morning, looking at my reflection in the stained mirror, I saw less and less of Eleanor Vance, the woman who had lived a quiet, respectable life, and more of a stranger. A tired, defeated woman, fading into the background. My first attempt at finding help led me to the local homeless shelter. The building was stark, with a long line of weary faces snaking out the door. The air inside was heavy with the scent of disinfectant and unspoken sorrow. When my turn finally came, a kind but overworked woman behind a desk shook her head apologetically. "We're completely full, ma'am. There's a waiting list, but it's long. We can put your name down, but I can't promise anything for weeks, maybe months." The words landed like a physical blow. No immediate hope, nowhere to go. The safety net I had envisioned simply didn't exist for me. Survival became my grim instructor. I learned quickly how to make my meager savings stretch. A cup of coffee from a gas station convenience store became a luxury. Not just for the warmth it offered, but for the precious hours I could sit unnoticed, using their restroom, and recharging my phone, which was almost dead. Hunger was a constant companion. I began to observe the other silent figures on the street, learning their unspoken rules. I learned where restaurants left out their trash bins, where stale bread and discarded scraps might be found, always at night, always with a knot of shame tightening in my stomach. The humiliation of sifting through garbage, competing with rodents, chipped away at my dignity, piece by agonizing piece. Yet, the physical discomfort, the gnawing hunger, the bone-deep weariness, these were not the deepest pains. The most profound agony was the invisibility. People walked past me on the street, their gazes sliding over me as if I were a ghost, a smudge on the landscape. They averted their eyes, stepped around me, their faces carefully neutral, unwilling to acknowledge my existence. I was no longer Eleanor Vance, mother, friend, neighbor. I was merely one of them, a part of the urban scenery to be ignored. It was a dehumanization that stripped me bare, making me feel less than human, an outcast in a world that once was mine. 2 weeks trickled into my new, harsh reality. The edges of my grief for Daniel had dulled slightly, replaced by the sharp, immediate pangs of survival. I was back in Riverside Park one afternoon, huddled on a bench, trying to blend into the scenery, when a familiar, high-pitched laugh cut through the drone of city sounds. My head snapped up. There she was, Vivian. She was walking with another woman, both impeccably dressed, their arms laden with designer shopping bags. Their faces were animated with easy laughter, a stark contrast to my own hollow existence. Vivian's eyes, scanning the park, landed on me. Her laughter stopped abruptly, replaced by a predatory smirk. She nudged her friend, pointing a manicured finger directly at me. My heart sank, a cold dread washing over me. She started walking towards me, her friend trailing curiously behind. Well, 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 Vivian drawled, stopping a few feet away, her voice dripping with mock surprise. Look who it is. Eleanor. She looked me up and down, a sneer twisting her features. Having fun living with the dogs, darling? Enjoying the fresh air? She pulled out her phone, holding it up, aiming the camera lens at my face. Smile for the camera, old woman. I want to remember this. My blood ran cold. The humiliation was unbearable. Vivian, please, I whispered, my voice hoarse from disuse. Just leave me alone. I tried to turn away, to hide my face, but she moved, blocking my attempt. Leave you alone? Oh, come now, she taunted, her eyes sparkling with malicious glee. After all Daniel had to put up with? He always said you were a burden, you know. He wanted to put you in a nursing home, but he was too soft. She leaned in, her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper. He hated that you were always underfoot. The lie hung heavy in the air, a cruel twisting of Daniel's memory. My son, my kind, loving son, would never have said such a thing. He loved me. He couldn't have called me a burden. The words stung more than any physical blow, a betrayal worse than losing my home. It was an assault on Daniel's character, on our shared love. Vivian then straightened up, a bored expression replacing her cruel grin. Anyway, she said, as if suddenly remembering an inconsequential detail. The will reading is next week, Tuesday, 10 a.m., at Winston and Hayes. Don't be late. Or do. Doesn't matter, really. She pulled a crisp business card from her designer purse and, with a flick of her wrist, dropped it to the ground at my feet. Then, with a triumphant smirk, she turned and walked away with her friend, their laughter resuming as if I were no more than a speck of dust they had brushed off their expensive shoes. I watched them go, my body trembling with a mix of shame and suppressed rage. When they were out of sight, I slowly bent down, my fingers shaking as I picked up the small, glossy card. Winston and Hayes, attorneys at law. A tiny, fragile spark ignited in the cavern of my despair. Daniel's will. Could it be? Could he have made provisions for me? Despite Vivian's cruel lies, the Daniel I knew, the son I had raised, couldn't have abandoned me entirely. Perhaps, deep down, he still loved me. This card, this unexpected invitation, felt like a lifeline, a glimmer of hope in the overwhelming darkness. 5 days until Tuesday. I looked down at my grimy clothes, my matted hair, my unwashed skin. I had to go. I had to find out. And I had to make myself presentable. This was my last chance, my only thread of connection to the life I once knew. Unbeknownst to me, I was standing on the precipice of a massive change, a shift that would ripple through my shattered world in ways I couldn't yet imagine. The business card became my beacon. For the next 4 days, my desperate focus shifted from survival to presentation. The public library, a haven of warmth and quiet, became my sanctuary. I spent hours there, pretending to read, but mostly just resting, seeking refuge from the biting autumn air and the endless scrutiny of the streets. It was there, amidst the comforting scent of old books, that I found an unexpected ally. Miss Lee, the librarian, was a kind-faced woman with spectacles perched on her nose. She had observed my quiet presence over the past few days, and perhaps she saw beyond the grime and the worn clothes. One afternoon, as I sat hunched over a forgotten newspaper, she approached me softly. "Excuse me, dear," she murmured, her voice gentle. "I have something that might help." She placed a small, discreet package next to me. A bar of soap, a travel-sized bottle of shampoo, and a clean, folded washcloth. Her eyes met mine, full of unspoken understanding and compassion. "The staff shower is in the back," she whispered. "It's empty after closing, before the evening shift comes in." A wave of profound gratitude washed over me, so strong it almost brought me to tears. That evening, I followed her instructions. The shower, though utilitarian, felt like a lavish spa. The hot water cascaded over my aching body, washing away not just the physical dirt, but weeks of accumulated shame and despair. I scrubbed my hair until it squeaked, working the rich lather into my scalp, trying to bring back some life to the dull strands. I scrubbed my skin until it tingled, feeling the grime of the streets disappear down the drain. It was a small act, but it was profoundly transformative. I emerged feeling lighter, cleaner, and for the first time in weeks, a faint spark of my old self returned. My clothes, though still wrinkled and threadbare, didn't carry the telltale scent of the streets. It was a small victory, but it meant everything. Tuesday morning found me standing before the imposing glass doors of Sterling and Associates, a prestigious law firm nestled in the heart of downtown. The building gleamed with modern architecture, reflecting the bustling city street. I felt utterly minuscule, a discarded piece of the urban landscape trying to blend into a world of polished marble and expensive suits. My heart hammered against my ribs, a mixture of apprehension and a fragile hope. This was it. My last chance. I walked into the opulent lobby, my worn sneakers squeaking faintly on the polished floor. The receptionist, a young woman with impeccably styled hair, looked up from her computer, her expression carefully neutral as she took in my appearance. "May I help you?" she asked, her voice polite but distant. "I'm Eleanor Vance," I said, trying to steady my voice. "I'm here for Daniel Hartwell's will reading." She nodded, then gestured towards a plush waiting area. "Mr. Sterling will be with you shortly. You're early." I sank into an armchair that felt impossibly soft, my backpack clutched tightly in my lap. The minutes ticked by, each one stretching into an eternity. Just as my nervousness reached its peak, the double doors of the office swung open. Vivian. She swept in, 15 minutes late, as if making an entrance was her right. She was dressed in a sleek black designer suit, her hair perfectly coiffed, her makeup flawless. A faint, expensive perfume wafted into the waiting room, a stark contrast to my own carefully scrubbed but still humble presentation. Her eyes immediately found me. A flicker of surprise, then a curl of disgust, twisted her perfect features. She sniffed demonstratively, as if catching a foul odor. "Ugh, it smells like a dumpster in here," she muttered, loud enough for the receptionist and me to hear. She then looked directly at me, her gaze condescending. "Still slumming it." "I see, Eleanor. You couldn't even manage a clean outfit for Daniel's will reading? How utterly disrespectful." My face burned with humiliation, but I held my tongue. The streets had taught me a profound lesson in silence. Engaging with Vivian was like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. It only fed her cruelty. I simply met her gaze, unflinching, choosing dignity over a futile argument. Just then, a tall, distinguished man, with silver hair and a kind, intelligent face emerged from an inner office. "Mrs. Vance? Mrs. Hartwell? Please, come in." He extended a hand towards Vivian, then to me, his grip surprisingly firm and warm. "I'm Mr. Sterling." He led us into a spacious, wood-paneled office. A large, mahogany table dominated the room, with 3 chairs arranged around it. He indicated for us to sit. "Thank you both for coming," Mr. Sterling began, once we were seated. He opened a thick folder, adjusted his spectacles, and cleared his throat. "I am here today to read the last will and testament of Daniel Michael Hartwell." Vivian leaned forward, her eyes bright with eager anticipation, a faint, greedy smile playing on her lips. She had clearly envisioned a significant inheritance, a windfall to secure her luxurious future. I simply sat, my hands clasped tightly in my lap, trying to calm the frantic beating of my heart. Mr. Sterling began to read, his voice calm and measured. Daniel's assets include a 2019 Honda Civic, valued at approximately $18,000, a checking account with a balance of $3,200, and a 401k retirement account with a current balance of $47,000. Vivian's eager expression remained, her eyes already mentally calculating the total. Not a massive fortune, perhaps, but a comfortable sum, enough to start fresh, enough for her to enjoy. My own hopes, small as they were, fluttered. Perhaps there was something for me after all. But then, Mr. Sterling's tone shifted, a hint of somberness entering his voice. "However, it is also my duty to inform you of Mr. Hartwell's outstanding liabilities." He paused, flipping a page. According to his financial records, Mr. Hartwell had accumulated significant debt. This includes $22,000 in credit card debt, a personal loan totaling $15,000, and outstanding medical bills amounting to $8,000. Vivian's face, which had been alight with anticipation, now crumpled into a mask of dismay. Her jaw went slack. She snatched a calculator from her purse, her fingers flying over the keys. The Honda Civic, the checking account, the 401k, these were quickly overshadowed by the sum of Daniel's debts. "Wait, what?" Vivian blurted out, her voice sharp with disbelief. "After all that, what's even left? The car will have to be sold to cover these debts, won't it?" Her greedy dreams of a swift inheritance evaporated before her eyes. Mr. Sterling nodded gravely. "Unfortunately, after settling the outstanding debts, there will be very little left to distribute. The car will indeed need to be liquidated to cover a significant portion of the liabilities." Vivian was stunned, her expression a mixture of shock and fury. But what about the house?" she demanded, her voice rising. "It was his property." She shot a venomous glance at me, a silent accusation that I was somehow responsible for this unexpected financial disaster. Mr. Sterling looked puzzled. He flipped through the will again, then consulted his notes. "The house on Maple Street? Mrs. Hartwell, I have no record of any real estate holdings in Daniel Michael Hartwell's name. Are you absolutely certain about this?" Vivian's eyes darted nervously. "Of course, I'm certain. He told me he owned it. He said he transferred it to his name." She pointed a trembling finger at me. "She knows. She saw the deed." My heart, which had been a lead weight, suddenly gave a fierce throb. The pieces clicked into place. The missing deed. Vivian's triumphant display. Her confident assertions. It was all a lie. A cruel, calculated lie. I looked directly at Vivian, my gaze steady, cold. The silence of the streets, the invisibility, the indignity, it all coalesced into a quiet strength. "Because," I said, my voice cutting through the tension, clear and firm, breaking my long silence. "The house doesn't belong to Daniel. It belongs to me." Vivian turned her head slowly, her elegant facade cracking. Her mouth, usually a tight, scornful line, hung slightly open in utter disbelief. Her eyes, wide with a sudden, dawning horror, were fixed on me. "That's impossible," she choked out, her voice a strained whisper. That's a lie. I saw the papers. Daniel told me he owned it. I met her gaze, my own eyes calm and steady. The invisibility of the streets had stripped me bare, but it had also forged a new kind of resilience. I had nothing left to lose, and in that, a strange strength had taken root. You saw papers, Vivian, I replied, my voice clear and unwavering. But you didn't see the deed. Not the real one. Mr. Sterling, who had been observing the exchange with a keen analytical gaze, cleared his throat. Mrs. Vance, he interjected, his tone polite but firm. Do you have any documentation to support your claim? Without a word, I reached into the tattered shopping bag I carried, my fingers brushing against the worn fabric of my few possessions. From the bottom, I carefully retrieved a crisp, official-looking folder. It was a folder I had retrieved from the library's printer, a replica of one I had tucked away in my strongbox long ago, back when my world was still intact. I carefully extracted a single, parchment-like document and slid it across the polished mahogany table towards Mr. Sterling. He picked it up, his brow furrowed in concentration. As he scanned the document, his expression shifted from professional skepticism to one of surprised recognition. This is a certified copy of the deed for 247 Maple Street, he stated, his voice now imbued with authority. He looked up at me. And it clearly states that Eleanor Vance has been the sole owner of the property since 1987. Furthermore, he continued, glancing back at the document, it appears the mortgage on this property was fully paid off 8 years ago. Vivian gasped. The color drained from her face, leaving it pale and sickly. With a sudden, desperate lunge, she snatched the deed from Mr. Sterling's hand. Her eyes frantically darted across the text, her lips moving silently as she read. Her initial confusion quickly morphed into raw panic, a desperate fear replacing her earlier arrogance. No, this can't be right, she cried, her voice rising in pitch. Daniel told me he owned it. He said he transferred it for tax purposes. That it was all legal. I watched her, a ghost of a bitter smile touching my lips. Daniel either lied to you, Vivian, or you misunderstood, I clarified, my voice devoid of emotion. He never owned that property, not a single square foot of it. He offered to help with the utilities and maintenance, yes, and I appreciated that. But the house was always mine, and the deed was always in my name. I paused, allowing the gravity of my words to sink in. And those mortgage papers you saw, the ones you claimed proved Daniel's ownership? I continued, my gaze unwavering. Those were copies of my original mortgage, the one I paid off 8 years ago. I kept them with my important documents, in case I ever needed to refinance or for record-keeping. They proved nothing of Daniel's ownership. They only proved my history with the house. Mr. Sterling, who had been quietly observing, cleared his throat again. He retrieved the deed from Vivian's trembling hand and re-examined it. Mrs. Hartwell, as an officer of the court, I can confirm that this deed is legitimate. Mrs. Vance is indeed the sole, legal owner of the property at 247 Maple Street. There is no record of Daniel Michael Hartwell ever holding ownership of that particular address. The air in the room grew thick with tension. Vivian sank back into her chair, her face a mask of disbelief and betrayal. She had been so certain, so utterly convinced of her elaborate lie, but I wasn't finished. I had endured too much to let her off easy. And another thing, Vivian, I stated, my voice cutting through the stunned silence. Daniel never paid the mortgage on that house. Not a single payment. I paid it. All of it. From my own savings account, this new bombshell hit Vivian like a physical blow. Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with bewilderment. Your savings account? She scoffed, a desperate laugh escaping her lips. That's impossible. You told me you lived on Social Security. You had no other income. I allowed myself a small, mirthless chuckle. I never told you I was living on Social Security, Vivian. I corrected her gently, but with an underlying steel. You assumed I was. And I never corrected you. Why would I? It suited my purposes to let you believe what you wanted to believe. And what you believed, apparently, was that I was a doddering old woman, living on a pittance, completely dependent. My voice grew stronger, each word a hammer blow against her carefully constructed lies. You, Vivian, as a guest in my home for 5 long years, meticulously planning my eviction, patiently waiting for what you believed was your inheritance, just threw your hostess onto the street. You took away my home, my comfort, my peace, all based on a lie you either conjured or desperately clung to. I looked around the room, meeting Mr. Sterling's understanding gaze, then letting my eyes settle back on Vivian's now thoroughly shattered expression. The truth, in its simple, unvarnished form, hung in the air, undeniable and devastating. The house was mine. It had always been mine. And Vivian, in her greed and deceit, had become the author of her own spectacular downfall. If you're finding Eleanor's story as captivating as I am, don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe so you don't miss a single twist. Her journey is just beginning. And trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Mr. Sterling, his earlier professional demeanor now tinged with genuine intrigue, turned to Vivian. Mrs. Hartwell, he advised, his voice measured. Given these new developments, I strongly recommend you consult with your own legal counsel. This situation has clearly become more complex than initially presented. Vivian, still reeling from the revelation, merely stared blankly. But before she could formulate a response, I spoke again. Oh, I've already done that, Mr. Sterling, I stated calmly, my gaze fixed on Vivian's stunned face. The past 2 weeks, living on the streets, offered me quite a bit of time to think, and to make some phone calls from the public library. When I could charge my phone, Vivian's eyes widened further, a mixture of shock and dawning fear replacing her prior indignation. The woman she had so easily discarded, the helpless old lady she had sneered at, was not at all who she thought. This quiet, dignified Eleanor was not only alive, but she was fighting back. I reached into my shopping bag once more, pulling out another document. This one was neatly folded, a fresh, official stamp visible on its corner. I slid it across the table, not to Mr. Sterling this time, but directly towards Vivian. This, I announced, my voice steady, is an eviction notice. It's properly filed with the court. You have 30 days, Vivian, to vacate my property at 247 Maple Street. Vivian snatched the paper, her fingers trembling. She unfolded it, her eyes racing across the legal text. As she processed the words, the last vestiges of color drained from her face, leaving her ghost pale. You can't do this, she shrieked, her voice cracking with desperation. Daniel wouldn't want this. He loved me. My response was stark, unyielding. Daniel is dead, Vivian, and I'm very much alive, despite your best efforts to destroy me. The words hung in the air, a cold, hard truth. Then, I took out a final, much thicker, manila envelope from my bag. It felt heavy, substantial. I handed it to Mr. Sterling. Mr. Sterling, I said, a faint smile playing on my lips. I believe it's time for the complete picture. He accepted the envelope, a curious gleam in his eyes. He opened it carefully and began to extract the contents. One by one, he laid out documents onto the table. His eyebrows, already raised in surprise, climbed even higher as he saw them. 7 distinct property deeds, each bearing my name. What is all this? Vivian whispered, her voice barely audible, a primal fear now replacing her anger. I leaned forward, my voice resonating with a quiet power I hadn't known I possessed. The house on Maple Street. Vivian, I explained, the one you so eagerly claimed as your own, is actually my smallest holding. Mr. Sterling, now fully captivated, looked at me, a silent question in his gaze. Beyond 247 Maple Street, I continued, listing them off one by one, watching Vivian's face distort with each revelation. I also own the Riverside Shopping Plaza. It has several active businesses, all generating good rental income. Then there are 3 apartment buildings on Elm Street, fully occupied, quite profitable. There's also a duplex on Oak Avenue, and a warehouse down by the old industrial park, currently leased by a logistics company. Oh, and a small, but rather charming, mountain cabin upstate that I inherited from my great-aunt years ago. As I spoke, Mr. Sterling was quickly examining each deed, verifying their authenticity. His expression shifted from surprise to outright astonishment. He looked up, his eyes shining with a mixture of professional awe and personal admiration. "Mrs. Vance," he stated, his voice hushed. "Based on these documents, and the current market values, you are worth several $1,000,000. The words hung in the air, a shocking pronouncement in the previously quiet office. Vivian, who had been watching and listening, her face growing paler and paler with each property I named, finally shattered. A raw, guttural cry tore from her throat. Tears, not of sorrow but of pure, unadulterated rage and frustration, streamed down her face, smudging her expensive makeup. "Millions!" she shrieked, banging her fist on the table. "You have millions? Why? Why did you let us think you were poor? Why did you let Daniel think you needed help? Why did you live like that?" Her voice was a desperate wail, her dreams of an easy inheritance not just dashed, but utterly obliterated. I met her gaze, my expression softening slightly, a touch of melancholy entering my eyes. "I let Daniel believe I needed his help because he needed to feel needed. Vivian," I explained, the truth tinged with a deep, maternal love. "He was my son. He had his struggles, his own insecurities. He always wanted to take care of me, to be the strong one. Allowing him to contribute to the house, to help with the bills, it gave him purpose. It made him feel like he was providing for his mother, that he was responsible and successful." I paused, remembering Daniel, a pang of grief mingling with the complex emotions of the moment. "And more importantly," I continued, "I wanted our relationship to be about love, not about money. I didn't want him to ever feel like he was with me for my wealth, or that I was judging his financial choices. I wanted his love, and yours, to be genuine, untainted by the prospect of inheritance. I wanted to protect that." I looked at Vivian, a profound sadness in my eyes. "I never imagined it would lead to you throwing me out onto the street, under the assumption I had nothing." My quiet revelation hung in the air, a testament to a mother's selfless love and a stark contrast to the greed and deception that had driven Vivian's actions. The truth of my fortune, hidden not out of malice but out of love, had finally been unveiled, shattering Vivian's world just as she had attempted to shatter mine. After the astonishing revelation at Mr. Sterling's office, I found myself walking back to the house on Maple Street. There was no triumphant spring in my step, no surge of victorious adrenaline. Only a profound, bone-deep exhaustion settled over me, heavier than any physical discomfort I'd experienced on the streets. As I approached my home, the familiar facade, once a source of comfort, now felt subtly altered. I let myself in with the spare key I'd always kept, one Vivian hadn't known about. The interior of the house was indeed different. The living room, once filled with my well-loved antique furniture, now boasted a sleek, modern sectional sofa and a stark glass coffee table. The kitchen, my sanctuary, was unrecognizable, with new stainless steel appliances gleamed under freshly installed track lighting. Vivian had done more than just redecorate. She had clearly been on a spending spree, likely on credit, transforming my home into something she believed reflected her own aspirations. The irony was not lost on me. She had planned to claim my wealth and then spend it as if it were her own. I hadn't been in the house more than 15 minutes, still absorbing the scale of her changes, when the front door burst open. Vivian stormed in, her face blotchy from crying, her eyes wild with a frantic, desperate energy. She looked utterly distraught, a stark contrast to her earlier composed cruelty. "Eleanor, what are you doing here?" she shrieked, then seemed to remember the eviction notice. "No, wait. Never mind. This is all a misunderstanding. We can talk about this, right? We can negotiate." She wrung her hands, pacing back and forth in the living room she had so recently redecorated. I was grieving, Eleanor. Daniel was my husband. I wasn't thinking straight. You have to understand." I watched her, my expression unmoving. The desperation in her voice was palpable, but it struck no chord of sympathy in me. "Grieving, Vivian?" I asked, my voice dangerously soft. "What exactly were you grieving? The loss of my son, or the loss of what you believed was your impending inheritance?" Because from where I stand, it looked less like grief and more like opportunistic greed. She flinched as if I had struck her. "No. That's not fair. I didn't know you would actually be out on the street." I thought you'd go to a hotel, or stay with a friend, or something." Her voice was high-pitched, pleading. "You thought?" I scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "You never bothered to ask, did you, Vivian? You never cared enough to even consider where a 63-year-old woman with less than $400 might go. Once you had so cruelly cast her out of her own home, you just assumed I'd disappear quietly." She wrung her hands again, her eyes darting around the room, desperately searching for an angle. Okay, I made a mistake. A huge mistake. But we can fix this, Eleanor. We can be partners. I'll pay you rent for the house, I promise. And I can help you manage your other properties. I have a business degree, remember? I can modernize your investments, make them even more profitable for you. Think of all the money we could make together. She was practically panting with the effort, trying to sell me a future that, just hours ago, she thought was hers alone. I slowly shook my head. "Vivian," I said, my voice filled with a quiet finality. "I appreciate your sudden enthusiasm for my finances, but I already have comprehensive plans for my properties. The Riverside Shopping Plaza is scheduled for a major facade renovation and tenant improvement next quarter. The Cherry Street duplexes are getting new HVAC systems and updated kitchens. Even the mountain cabin is getting some much-needed structural work. All of it is already planned, budgeted, and funded." I stood up, walking slowly towards her. "And as for managing properties, Vivian, let me assure you, I've been managing these properties for over 20 years. I started acquiring them before you were even out of high school. My expertise, as you call it, is quite sufficient. I don't need your business degree to modernize anything. I've done quite well on my own. Thank you very much." Her face crumbled. The last vestiges of her desperate hope vanished, replaced by a hollow despair. So this is it?" she whispered. "You're really going to throw me out? You have 27 days, Vivian," I stated, reiterating the eviction notice. 27 days to find a new place. If you're not out by then, the sheriff will forcibly remove you. That is the law. And this time, I will ensure it is strictly enforced." Vivian recoiled as if struck. She stared at me, her mind racing, searching for any last shred of leverage. Her eyes suddenly glazed over with a strange, calculating intensity. "Wait," she said, her voice dropping, a new tone entering it, one of urgency and desperation. "Daniel. Something he told me before he died." A cold chill snaked down my spine. The way she said it, the sudden shift in her demeanor, hinted at something significant, something hidden. I watched her, my breath held captive. "About 6 months ago," Vivian began, her voice low, "Daniel was looking for something in your strongbox. I don't know what. But he found some of your financial documents. Not the deeds, no, but enough. Enough for him to realize how wealthy you really were." My heart gave a sudden, painful lurch. Daniel knew. My son had known all along. He was shocked at first, furious even. Vivian continued, watching my reaction carefully. "He felt foolish, like you'd tricked him. He told me he realized why you did it. He said he understood you just wanted him to feel useful, to be proud of himself for helping you. He was grateful, actually, to feel like he was providing for his mother." Vivian paused, her eyes searching mine for a reaction. "But he was worried about you, Eleanor. He was worried about what would happen to you if anything ever happened to him. He started saying he needed to make sure you were protected, that you wouldn't be left alone, that you wouldn't be taken advantage of." The words hung in the air, a belated echo of Daniel's love and concern, a silent protection that had, in a twisted way, always been there. He hadn't known the extent of Vivian's cruelty, or the depths of her deceit, but he had, in his own way, been looking out for me. My son had known. And in knowing, he had confirmed his love for me, a balm for the betrayal I had felt. However briefly, the revelation that Daniel had known about my wealth, and more profoundly, that he had understood my reasons for keeping it secret, left me stunned. A torrent of emotions, relief, regret, and a renewed surge of grief washed over me. He hadn't been oblivious or blindly manipulated. He had simply chosen to honor my decision, to cherish our bond over financial truths. Vivian, observing my reaction, pressed on, perhaps hoping to salvage some favor. "He said you were so good at keeping secrets, Eleanor," she continued, her voice still laced with desperation. "He said you had a mean streak when you needed it, but that it was usually hidden behind all that." She gestured vaguely, clearly indicating herself as the target of Daniel's assessment of my latent resilience. Then came her final, chilling statement, one that pierced through the layers of deceit and misunderstanding. "But he also said he was terrified that your immense love for him, might make you vulnerable. He said he was scared you'd let someone hurt you if you thought it was what he wanted, or what was best for his memory." The words hung in the air, a devastating clarity. Daniel. My son. He hadn't just seen through my charade of comfortable modesty. He had seen through Vivian. He had recognized her potential for cruelty, her capacity for manipulation, and he had feared my own unconditional love for him might blind me to it. He had worried I would sacrifice my own well-being, even my home, out of a misguided sense of loyalty to his wishes or what I perceived as his legacy. He had seen us both, laid bare. A cold, hard resolve settled in my heart. The lingering tenderness for Daniel's memory now merged with a fierce protectiveness he had clearly tried to instill in me. My son, even in his final months, had quietly tried to arm me against the very threat Vivian had become. "Get out," I said, my voice barely a whisper, but imbued with an absolute, unshakable authority. "Get out of my house, Vivian." Now, Vivian, seeing the finality in my eyes, the absolute absence of pity, faltered. She opened her mouth to argue, but the words died on her lips. She finally understood. My love for Daniel was no longer her weapon, it was my shield. With a defeated sigh, she turned and walked out, the front door closing with a soft click that sealed her fate. I watched her go, then slowly sank onto the very couch she had chosen, the expensive fabric feeling alien beneath my fingertips. The quiet of the house, once filled with unspoken tensions, was now simply empty. And then, finally, the tears came. Not just for Daniel's physical absence, but for the unspoken truths, the years of quiet pretense, the silent battles he had fought, and the love that, even in death, had tried to protect me. I cried until my eyes were raw, until the reservoir of grief and exhaustion was finally, momentarily, emptied. 6 months later, my life bore little resemblance to the one Vivian had tried to extinguish. My mountain cabin, the small, charming retreat I had mentioned, had undergone a significant transformation. It was no longer just a cabin. It had become the haven, a sanctuary for older, discarded rescue dogs. The property, with its sprawling grounds and serene forest backdrop, was now a vibrant, bustling home for those who, like me, had been forgotten and cast aside. I found profound purpose in caring for these animals. There was Maxine, a 13-year-old golden retriever, whose previous owners had surrendered her because she was too old and too much trouble. Her cloudy eyes held a deep sadness that slowly, with patient love and good food, began to fade, replaced by a grateful warmth. I understood her. I understood the quiet desperation of feeling unwanted, of being invisible. The irony of caring for these forgotten souls when I myself had so recently been invisible on the streets was a profound and comforting symmetry. Meanwhile, my properties continued to thrive. Mr. Sterling, impressed by my business acumen, had become my legal counsel and property manager, ensuring everything ran smoothly. My net worth, despite the considerable expenses of running the haven, continued to increase steadily. I was a millionaire, a successful businesswoman, and most importantly, I was no longer invisible. An unexpected friendship had also blossomed from the ashes of my past. Miss Lee, the kind librarian who had offered me shampoo and a shower, had become a regular volunteer at the haven. She loved the dogs, and her gentle, compassionate nature was a welcome presence. We often shared quiet cups of tea, discussing books and the antics of the dogs, a testament to the unexpected bonds forged in moments of vulnerability. One crisp autumn afternoon, as I was bandaging a minor paw injury on an elderly terrier named Pip, my phone rang. The caller ID showed an unfamiliar number. Eleanor Vance, I answered, my voice calm and collected. Mrs. Vance, this is Detective Hayes from the County Sheriff's Department. A professional, even-toned voice replied. I'm calling to inform you that Vivian Hartwell has been arrested. My heart gave a jolt. Arrested? For what? Credit card fraud and identity theft, Mrs. Vance, Detective Hayes stated. Turns out, after she was evicted from your property, she started trying to secure loans and open new lines of credit using your name and social security number. She even forged documents, claiming you had dementia, and used some rather unflattering photographs of you taken in the park to prove your diminished capacity. The words hit me like a cold splash of water. The homeless photographs, Vivian taking pictures of me in the park. My blood ran cold, a wave of nausea washing over me. She hadn't just tried to humiliate me. She had used my temporary vulnerability, my invisibility, as a weapon to commit a far more insidious crime. She had continued her cruel charade, even after her own downfall. My son had known. He had seen it. And now, the full reckoning was finally at hand. The realization that Vivian had not only attempted to humiliate me but had actively used my vulnerability to commit criminal acts was a chilling one. Her cruel, homeless photographs, taken with such malicious glee in the park, were not just a means of taunting. They were carefully collected evidence intended to support her fraudulent claims of my mental incapacitation. The depths of her calculation were truly horrifying. But the woman who had once allowed herself to be manipulated, the Eleanor who might have shown misguided mercy, was gone. The Eleanor who had endured the cold streets, the hunger, and the dehumanizing invisibility, was resolute. There would be no mercy this time. Vivian's actions demanded justice. Not just for me, but for the principle of decency. I would press charges. The next morning, I drove to the county sheriff's department. The same officer who had delivered the devastating news of Daniel's death, Detective Hayes, greeted me with a somber, respectful nod. I spent 2 hours in a sterile interview room, my voice steady as I recounted Vivian's deceit, her eviction, and now, her desperate attempts at fraud and identity theft. I reviewed the evidence they had compiled, fraudulent loan applications bearing my forged signature, credit reports showing suspicious activity, and indeed, the damning photographs Vivian had used to prove my supposed dementia. Detective Hayes explained how Vivian had attempted to secure lines of credit, even small mortgages, against my properties, presenting herself as my appointed guardian, exploiting my absence and the fabricated story of my mental decline. Her plan was elaborate, audacious, and utterly cold-blooded. As I signed the formal complaint, affixing my name to the document that would send Vivian to prison for several years, I felt a quiet, profound sense of resolve. There was no anger, no satisfaction, just a deep-seated conviction that this was necessary. It was the natural consequence of her choices. Driving back to the haven, the winding mountain roads, a familiar comfort, I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in months. The burden of Vivian's deceit, her betrayal, and the lingering injustice was finally lifting. Justice, in its own slow and methodical way, was being served. That evening, as the sun dipped below the rugged peaks, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, I sat on the porch of the haven. All around me, contented snores and soft whimpers filled the air. Maxine, the golden retriever, lay curled at my feet, her head resting on my shoes, a soft, trusting sigh escaping her. The sanctuary was full, a vibrant testament to resilience and renewed purpose. My mind drifted to the future. The haven was already a success, but there were so many more forgotten souls. I began to mentally sketch out plans for a second sanctuary facility, a larger space with more specialized care for even older, more infirm animals. This was my new path, my new legacy. It wasn't about the money, though my properties continued to generate substantial income. It was about creating a place where no one, no matter how old or how neglected, would ever feel invisible again. I thought of Daniel then. The sting of his absence was still there, a dull ache, but it was now softened by understanding. He had known my secret, and he had loved me still. Not because I needed him, not because I was a vulnerable old woman he had to protect, but simply because I was his mother. It was a love strong enough to endure the truth, a love that transcended superficialities. That realization brought a profound sense of peace. And the dogs at the haven, they didn't care how much money I had or what my past was. They loved me unconditionally, simply for my kindness, my gentle hands, and the warmth I offered. Their innocent, uncomplicated affection was a balm to a heart that had known so much complexity and betrayal. Soon, I decided, I would replace the old, faded photograph of Daniel on my office wall. I would add a new one, a picture of myself, here at the haven, surrounded by Maxine, Pip, and all the other dogs who had found their way home. It would be a testament to a life not just reclaimed, but reimagined. My legacy would not just be measured in dollars and properties, but in wagging tails and soft purrs, in the peaceful sleep of forgotten creatures, given love freely. I was no longer afraid of who I truly was, a woman of strength, resilience, and profound compassion. I was living the life Daniel, my loving son, would have wanted for me. Bravely, honestly, and with an open heart. My journey from the streets to this sanctuary was more than just a comeback. It was a revelation, a testament to the enduring power of self-worth and purpose. The weeks following Vivian's arrest were a whirlwind of legal preparations. Detective Hayes and Mr. Sterling worked meticulously, gathering evidence, compiling financial records, and interviewing witnesses. I was called upon several times, not just to reiterate my statements, but to provide further context, to explain the timeline of events, and to verify the authenticity of documents. Each interaction solidified my resolve. Vivian's actions were not merely regrettable. They were criminal, calculated, and deeply damaging. The day of the trial finally arrived. A crisp, cold morning that felt far removed from the warmth and comfort of the haven. The county courthouse, an imposing gray stone building, loomed over the city square. Inside, the atmosphere was hushed, formal, and tinged with a solemnity that belied the dramatic human stories unfolding within its walls. I sat in the witness waiting room, Miss Lee by my side, offering quiet support. She had insisted on coming, her presence a comforting anchor in the unsettling environment. When it was my turn to testify, I walked into the courtroom with a steady gait, my head held high. The courtroom was sparsely populated, but I immediately spotted Vivian at the defense table, her face drawn and pale, her usual impeccable attire replaced by a drab, ill-fitting suit. Our eyes met for a fleeting moment. There was no anger, no triumph in my gaze, just a quiet acknowledgement of the tragic path she had chosen. She, in turn, looked away quickly, unable to meet my eyes, a shadow of defeat etched onto her features. Under questioning from the prosecution, my voice remained calm and clear. I recounted the devastating phone call about Daniel, the funeral, Vivian's cruel eviction from my home, and my subsequent weeks of homelessness. I described her malicious taunts in the park, the shocking revelation at the will reading, and the final, insidious twist of her identity theft and fraudulent schemes. The photographs Vivian had taken of me, looking disheveled and vulnerable on the park bench, were presented as evidence. They were intended to be her proof of my mental decline, but in the sterile, objective light of the courtroom, they became irrefutable proof of her calculated malice. It was a chilling full circle. Vivian's defense attempted to paint her as a grieving widow, overwhelmed by loss, driven to desperate acts by emotional distress and a mistaken belief about her husband's estate. They tried to discredit my testimony, suggesting my sudden wealth was a fabrication, or that I was somehow complicit in deceiving Daniel. But Mr. Sterling, acting as an advisor to the prosecution on complex financial matters, methodically dismantled their arguments, presenting irrefutable proof of my property holdings, my legitimate income streams, and the clear timeline of Vivian's fraudulent activities. The trial lasted 3 harrowing days. On the final day, the jury returned with a swift verdict. Guilty. Guilty on all counts of credit card fraud and identity theft. A wave of hushed murmurs swept through the courtroom. Vivian collapsed into her chair, silent tears streaming down her face, her shoulders shaking uncontrollably. It was a stark contrast to the cold composure she had displayed at Daniel's funeral, or when she had gleefully evicted me. Seeing her broken, I felt a flicker of something close to pity, but it was quickly overshadowed by the memory of the cold park bench, the gnawing hunger, and the dehumanizing invisibility she had inflicted upon me. The justice being served was not about revenge, it was about accountability. The judge, stern and unyielding, pronounced her sentence: 5 years in state prison, with an additional 3 years of probation upon release. She was also ordered to pay substantial restitution, though I knew, and didn't particularly care, if I would ever see a penny of it. The chapter of Vivian Hartwell's destructive greed was finally, irrevocably closed. Leaving the courthouse, the fresh air felt invigorating, like shedding a heavy cloak. Miss Lee squeezed my arm. "You were so brave, Eleanor," she whispered, her eyes shining with admiration. I simply nodded, a quiet sense of peace settling over me. The legal battle was over. My name was cleared, my truth affirmed, and the woman who had sought to destroy me was now facing the consequences of her choices. Life at the Haven, thankfully, had continued its serene rhythm throughout the legal proceedings. The dogs, oblivious to the drama of human justice, offered constant, uncomplicated comfort. They welcomed me back with wagging tails and eager licks, their unconditional love a stark contrast to the conditional, self-serving affections I had encountered in the past. The plans for the second sanctuary were already well underway. I had secured a beautiful piece of land, larger than the current Haven, with even more space for fields and forested areas for the dogs to roam. Architects were drawing up designs for specialized veterinary care units, warm, comfortable kennels, and a dedicated rehabilitation area. Miss Lee, now a regular fixture at the Haven, was enthusiastically organizing a team of volunteers, coordinating fundraising efforts, and even helping me establish a nonprofit foundation to ensure the sanctuary's long-term sustainability. One evening, as I reviewed the blueprints for the new facility, I found myself staring at the picture on my office wall, the one of Daniel as a boy, smiling brightly. I smiled back at him, a warmth spreading through my chest. He had known, and he had loved me fiercely enough to accept my unspoken truth. His concerns about my vulnerability, his desire to protect me, were a testament to that enduring love. He would have been proud, I knew, of the life I was building, a life of purpose, honesty, and boundless compassion. I reached for my phone, scrolling through the photos until I found one taken recently by Miss Lee. Me, surrounded by a joyful cluster of dogs, their furry bodies pressed against mine, their eyes reflecting trust and contentment. I sent it to a local print shop. This would be the new picture, the one that would grace my office wall, alongside Daniel's. It was a testament to where I had been, what I had overcome, and the beautiful, honest life I was now living. My legacy would be not just wealth, but warmth. Not just properties, but peace. Not just survival, but sanctuary. I was Eleanor Vance, no longer invisible, no longer afraid, and finally, truly free. The rhythm of life at the Haven settled into a comforting, fulfilling pattern. Mornings began with the joyful chaos of excited barks and wagging tails, a chorus of appreciation for breakfast and the promise of a new day. My days were filled with the simple, profound tasks of caring for the dogs, feeding, grooming, administering medicines, and most importantly, offering endless cuddles and reassuring words. Each wag of a tail, each soft nuzzle against my hand, was a balm to my soul, a constant reminder of the purest forms of love and gratitude. The expansion plans for the second sanctuary, which I affectionately began to call Haven 2, were progressing beautifully. The land was purchased, the architectural designs finalized, and groundbreaking was scheduled for early spring. This new project wasn't just a building. It was a testament to the idea that every life, no matter how old or broken, deserved a second chance, a place of safety and love. My financial resources, once a carefully guarded secret, were now a powerful tool for good, a means to build a tangible legacy of compassion. Miss Lee, my librarian friend, had become an indispensable part of this new chapter. She not only volunteered her time at the Haven, but her keen organizational skills and quiet efficiency proved invaluable in setting up the nonprofit foundation. She meticulously handled paperwork, managed our growing volunteer base, and even organized small community outreach events to raise awareness for senior animal adoption. We often spent evenings poring over blueprints, discussing animal welfare policies, or simply sharing stories over a cup of herbal tea. Her quiet strength and unwavering kindness were a constant source of inspiration, a true friendship born from the most unexpected circumstances. One sunny afternoon, as I was supervising the construction preparations for Haven 2, my phone rang. It was Mr. Sterling. "Eleanor," he began, his voice tinged with a slight excitement. "I've just received a rather interesting call from the Maple Street house." My heart gave a small flutter. The Maple Street house. It had been several months since Vivian's eviction, and the house had sat empty, awaiting renovations. "Oh? What about it?" I asked. A sense of curiosity piqued. "Well," Mr. Sterling continued, "it seems Vivian's parents have contacted my office. They're inquiring about the possibility of purchasing the house." I paused, absorbing this unexpected news. Vivian's parents. I had met them only a handful of times, polite but distant people who seemed as much a stranger to Vivian as they were to me. "Vivian's parents?" I repeated slowly. "Why would they want to buy it?" "They expressed a desire to make amends, as they put it," Mr. Sterling explained. "Apparently, they've only recently learned the full extent of Vivian's actions and the devastating impact it had on you. They seem genuinely appalled and want to offer some form of reconciliation." A small, sad smile touched my lips. "Reconciliation," I murmured. "After everything." Part of me recoiled at the thought of any further connection to Vivian's family, but another part recognized the genuine remorse that might be behind such an offer. "What kind of offer are they making?" Mr. Sterling quoted a price. It was fair, slightly above market value, a clear indication of their earnestness. They also offered to cover the costs of any damages Vivian may have inflicted on the property during her occupation, which, incidentally, are quite extensive given her redecorations and hasty departure, he added wryly. I considered it for a moment. Selling the house would finalize that painful chapter, turning a place of past hurt into a resource for future good. "Tell them yes," I finally said. "Tell them I'll sell, but on one condition. They never mention Vivian's name to me again. This transaction is about closing a door, not reopening old wounds," Mr. Sterling agreed, assuring me he would handle all the details. Later that week, a generous check arrived, accompanied by a heartfelt, if somewhat formal, letter of apology from Vivian's parents. They spoke of their shame and regret, their hopes for my continued well-being, and their intention to use the house as a fresh start, perhaps even as a rental property for a deserving family. It was a surprising, unexpected closure, a final unraveling of the ties that bound me to Vivian's destructive choices. With the Maple Street house officially off my hands, my focus intensified on the sanctuaries. The local community, hearing about the Haven's mission through Miss Lee's outreach, began to respond with overwhelming generosity. Donations of blankets, food, and toys poured in. Local veterinarians offered discounted services, and even a group of high school students started a regular volunteering program, walking dogs and helping with chores. I began to see my story not as a personal tragedy, but as a testament to resilience, a beacon for others. My journey from invisibility to purpose had resonated deeply with people. I received letters and emails from individuals who had faced their own forms of betrayal or displacement, drawing strength from my refusal to be defeated. My story, once a source of private pain, had become a public source of hope. One evening, I hosted an open house at the Haven, inviting volunteers, donors, and curious community members. The air was filled with laughter, the gentle murmur of conversation, and the happy barks of dogs interacting with their new admirers. As I stood amidst the joyful commotion, a sense of profound contentment washed over me. I was surrounded by kindness, purpose, and unconditional love. My past, with its betrayals and hardships, had forged me into the woman I was meant to be. A woman who understood the value of every life, and the quiet power of a second chance. I had come full circle. From a park bench, invisible and discarded, to the heart of a vibrant, compassionate community. My hidden wealth, once a tool for quiet self-sufficiency, was now a force for widespread good. My sorrow over Daniel's loss was still present, a gentle ache, but it was now cradled by a profound sense of purpose and the unwavering belief that his love had, in its own way, guided me here. My story was no longer just about survival or even justice. It was about connection, about spreading light, and about the unexpected beauty that can emerge from the darkest of times. With Vivian's chapter firmly closed and the Maple Street house gracefully transitioned, my focus on the Haven and Haven, too, intensified. The blueprints for the second sanctuary evolved from mere drawings into tangible steel frames and rising walls. The construction site buzzed with activity, a symphony of hammers and machinery, each sound a testament to the future I was building. This wasn't just a personal project. It was becoming a symbol of hope in the community, attracting attention from unexpected corners. One morning, while reviewing architectural plans with the site manager, a sleek black car pulled up, an incongruous sight against the dusty backdrop of the construction. A well-dressed woman, impeccably suited and radiating an aura of quiet authority, stepped out. She introduced herself as Caroline Vance, a representative from a prominent national animal welfare organization. "Mrs. Vance," she began, her voice smooth and professional. "My organization has been following the remarkable work you're doing here at the Haven. Your commitment to older, discarded animals is truly inspiring. We've been particularly impressed with your innovative approach to rehabilitation and your community outreach." I invited her for a tour of the existing Haven, where she observed the happy, well-cared-for dogs, spoke with Miss Lee and our dedicated volunteers, and even offered a gentle hand to a particularly shy terrier mix named Barnaby. As we walked, she explained that her organization was looking to partner with smaller, impactful sanctuaries that demonstrated exceptional care and a sustainable model. "We believe," Caroline concluded, as we stood overlooking the burgeoning framework of Haven 2, "that your vision aligns perfectly with our mission. We'd like to offer a substantial grant to accelerate the completion of Haven 2, and potentially, to establish a long-term funding partnership that could help you expand your reach even further." The offer was monumental, far exceeding anything I had dared to dream. It wasn't just money. It was validation, a recognition of the hard work, the love, and the profound purpose that had bloomed from the ashes of my despair. It meant I could provide even better care, rescue even more animals, and create a truly lasting legacy. I accepted, of course, with a heart full of gratitude and a renewed sense of vigor. The partnership with the national organization brought the Haven unexpected national attention. Articles appeared in animal welfare magazines, local news segments featured heartwarming stories of our rescued dogs, and my own journey, from homelessness to sanctuary founder, became a compelling narrative of resilience. I found myself giving interviews, speaking at charity events, and even consulting with other nascent sanctuaries, sharing the lessons I had learned, both the painful and the profound. My once secret wealth, now openly utilized for benevolent purposes, had attracted other forms of interest. Mr. Sterling, ever vigilant and astute, informed me of inquiries from philanthropic organizations and even private investors interested in supporting my property portfolio. Recognizing its stability and ethical management, my business acumen, honed over decades of quiet, meticulous work, was no longer hidden. It was celebrated, admired. Amidst this flurry of activity, I remained grounded by the daily routines at the Haven. The unconditional love of the dogs was my anchor. They didn't care about grants or partnerships. They cared about belly rubs, meal times, and a warm place to sleep. They were my constant reminder of what truly mattered: kindness, care, and the simple joy of giving. Miss Lee, my steadfast friend, often mused about the unexpected turns my life had taken. "Who would have thought, Eleanor," she'd say, a twinkle in her eye, "that a forgotten deed and a kind gesture at the library would lead to all of this?" We'd share a knowing smile, understanding that sometimes the greatest transformations begin with the smallest acts of hope. One particularly poignant moment occurred during a media interview. A young reporter, earnest and wide-eyed, asked me about the source of my strength, how I had endured such profound betrayal and loss. I paused, looking out at the playful chaos of the dogs in the yard. "It was Daniel," I began, my voice soft but clear. "My son." He saw through the protective layers I had built around myself, and he saw the potential for harm from others. His concern, even in his final days, was a quiet testament to his love. It taught me that genuine love isn't about needing someone, but about truly seeing them, flaws and all, and wanting their happiness above all else. I continued. And then, there were these animals. They, too, were invisible, forgotten. They taught me that when you've been cast aside, when you've felt worthless, the greatest act of defiance is to find your worth again, to rebuild, and to offer that same unconditional love and acceptance to others. My strength came from realizing I was worth fighting for, and that others, like these beautiful dogs, were worth fighting for too. The reporter scribbled furiously, visibly moved. It was a powerful moment of catharsis for me, articulating the complex tapestry of grief, betrayal, resilience, and renewed purpose that had woven my new life. The haven was more than a sanctuary. It was a living testament to transformation. It was a place where old dogs could live out their golden years in peace, and where a once invisible woman could finally shine, radiating the light of her hard-won wisdom and boundless compassion. My legacy was no longer just about surviving. It was about thriving, and in doing so, creating a ripple effect of kindness that touched countless lives, both human and animal. The journey had been arduous, but the destination, filled with purpose and unexpected connections, was more beautiful than any dream. The grand opening of Haven 2 was a day of immense celebration. The new facility, sprawling and state-of-the-art, stood proudly amidst the quiet mountain landscape, a beacon of hope for senior animals. Local dignitaries, representatives from the National Animal Welfare Organization, dozens of volunteers, and countless community members gathered, their faces alight with pride and shared purpose. I stood on a makeshift stage, looking out at the joyous crowd, a profound sense of accomplishment swelling in my chest. Miss Lee, beaming, stood beside me, our shared journey reflected in our intertwined smiles. During my speech, I spoke not just of the animals, but of the human spirit. "This place," I said, my voice clear and resonant, "is built on the belief that every life has value, every story deserves a happy ending, and every heart, no matter how bruised, deserves unconditional love. Just as these animals found a second chance here, so too did I. From the depths of despair, I found purpose, strength, and a community that embraced me." I did not mention Vivian by name, but the subtext of my journey, now well known, resonated deeply with many in the audience. The success of the Haven and Haven 2 cemented my reputation not just as a successful businesswoman, but as a compassionate philanthropist. My once hidden properties continued to flourish under Mr. Sterling's expert management, generating a steady stream of income that funded the ever-growing needs of the sanctuaries. I dedicated myself wholeheartedly to the cause, finding an unimaginable joy in the daily rhythms of caring for the animals and nurturing the expanding community of volunteers and supporters. Yet, amidst all the external success and recognition, a quiet, internal process continued. The grief for Daniel, though softened by time and purpose, remained. It was a different kind of grief now, less raw, more reflective. The understanding that he had known about my wealth and had accepted my reasons had been a crucial balm to my wounded heart. It had allowed me to reconcile his memory with the pain of Vivian's betrayal, separating her actions from his true character. I spent many quiet evenings in my office at the Haven, gazing at the two photographs on my wall. On one side, Daniel, a mischievous grin on his boyish face. On the other, myself, surrounded by a tangle of happy, rescued dogs. They represented two different facets of love, two chapters of my life, both profoundly important. I often thought about Daniel's words, relayed by Vivian. His fear that my immense love for him might make me vulnerable, that I might allow someone to hurt me if I thought it was what he wanted. It was a heartbreaking insight into his own complex understanding of our relationship. He hadn't wanted me to be a victim, even in his name. He had wanted me to be strong, to be protected. This understanding liberated me in a way I hadn't anticipated. It freed me from any lingering guilt about not having told him the full truth of my wealth earlier. It affirmed that my decision to let him feel needed, to allow him the dignity of contributing, was a loving act, not a deceptive one. His love wasn't contingent on my perceived vulnerability or dependence. It was unconditional, a pure maternal bond that transcended material circumstances. The unconditional love I received from the dogs at the Haven mirrored this profound realization. They didn't care about my past, my wealth, or my social standing. They responded only to my kindness, my gentle touch, and the consistent care I offered. Their affections were untainted by expectation or judgment, a pure reflection of the love I poured into them. This simple, honest connection was a profound healing force. One day, Mr. Sterling visited the Haven for a quarterly review. As we discussed the financials and the plans for future expansions, he casually mentioned, "You know, Eleanor, Daniel always spoke so highly of you. He was incredibly proud of your strength and your quiet resilience. He often told me he admired how you handled everything, even when he thought you were struggling. He had a deep respect for you, a truly profound respect." His words, simple and heartfelt, brought a lump to my throat. Mr. Sterling had known Daniel professionally, and to hear this independent corroboration of Daniel's character, of his true feelings towards me, was incredibly comforting. It solidified the image of my son as a loving, discerning man who, despite his own human failings, had genuinely cherished and respected his mother. "He worried about me, didn't he?" I asked, my voice soft. Mr. Sterling nodded, a sad smile on his face. "He did. He was a good man, Eleanor. He just had his own way of showing it sometimes." That conversation brought a deeper closure than any legal verdict. It affirmed that Daniel's love for me was never a question. He had navigated his own complexities, his own sense of pride and responsibility, while always holding a deep affection for me. He had understood my choices, and in his own way, he had tried to protect me. My life had become a beautiful testament to resilience, a flourishing garden nurtured from the ashes of betrayal. I was Eleanor Vance, a woman who had faced the abyss of homelessness and emerged not just stronger, but profoundly wiser and more compassionate. My sanctuaries were more than just buildings. They were living embodiments of second chances, filled with the warmth of unconditional love and the quiet dignity of finding purpose after loss. And in every wagging tail, every soft purr, every grateful gaze, I saw a reflection of the enduring power of love, both given and received. A love that was, finally, truly free. With the Haven and Haven 2 fully operational and thriving, my entrepreneurial spirit, dormant for decades under the guise of quiet modesty, began to truly awaken. The success of the sanctuaries, both financially and in their profound impact on animal welfare, fueled a new ambition within me. I realized that my ability to manage properties and investments, once a private pursuit, could be leveraged for even greater good. Mr. Sterling, observing my renewed vigor, often remarked that I had found my true calling, far beyond simple real estate. My property portfolio, expertly managed by Mr. Sterling and his team, continued its steady growth. We diversified investments, explored new opportunities in ethical housing developments, and meticulously optimized each asset. The income generated flowed seamlessly into the nonprofit foundation that supported the Havens, ensuring their long-term sustainability and providing for even more ambitious expansion plans. I learned to delegate, to trust the expertise of others, but always remained deeply involved in the strategic decisions, my instincts sharpened by decades of careful observation and a lifetime of self-reliance. Miss Lee, my invaluable friend and partner in compassion, expanded her role within the foundation. Her quiet efficiency and innate understanding of community needs made her the perfect director of outreach and volunteer coordination. She established educational programs in local schools, teaching children about responsible pet ownership and the importance of adopting senior animals. Her initiatives fostered a new generation of animal lovers, connecting the community to the havens in profound ways. We often laughed, looking back at our first meeting, how a simple act of kindness in a library had blossomed into such a powerful force for change. The National Animal Welfare Organization, impressed by our rapid growth and transparent operations, continued their support, featuring the havens in their annual reports and national campaigns. This wider recognition brought more donations, more volunteers, and a steady stream of inquiries from other communities seeking to replicate our model. I found myself traveling occasionally, consulting with emerging sanctuaries, sharing my story not as a tale of victimhood, but as a blueprint for resilience and purposeful action. During one such trip, I visited a small, struggling town that desperately needed economic revitalization. The local mayor, having heard my story, approached me with an intriguing proposition. He spoke of an abandoned textile mill, a relic of a bygone era, now standing derelict and a blight on the town's landscape. He proposed that I, with my expertise in property redevelopment, consider investing in its transformation. The challenge ignited something deep within me. I saw not just a dilapidated building, but potential. Potential for new businesses, new jobs, and a new heartbeat for a fading community. It was a completely different venture from animal sanctuaries, yet the core principle remained the same: taking something discarded and giving it a second life, imbuing it with new purpose and worth. I spent weeks researching the project, bringing in urban planners and economic consultants. I envisioned not just commercial spaces, but perhaps a community center, affordable housing units, and even small workshops for local artisans. It was a complex undertaking, far larger than any single property redevelopment I had managed before, but I felt a surge of excitement, a renewed sense of challenge that stirred my entrepreneurial spirit. This new venture, distinct from the havens but complementary in its mission of revitalizing the overlooked, further solidified my sense of self-worth. I was no longer just a woman who managed her own wealth. I was a catalyst for change, an architect of new beginnings. The sting of being invisible, of being discarded, had transformed into a powerful empathy for anything that had been cast aside, be it an old dog or a forgotten building. My personal life, too, found a comfortable equilibrium. The initial pain of losing Daniel was now an enduring warmth, a cherished memory. I celebrated his life, remembering his laughter, his kindness, and his unwavering love. The photograph of him on my office wall served as a gentle reminder of the past, while the photo of me with my dogs was a joyful affirmation of the present. I found myself enjoying simple pleasures with new depth: long walks in the mountain air with a pack of happy dogs, quiet evenings with Miss Lee discussing a good book, the vibrant energy of community events at the Haven. These moments, once taken for granted, now shimmered with an added layer of gratitude. I no longer feared the future, nor did I dwell excessively on the past. I lived fully in the present, embracing each day with purpose and an open heart. The old fear of being judged for my wealth had completely dissipated. It was no longer a secret to be guarded, but a resource to be deployed for good. My financial independence, once a shield, was now a tool for empowerment, not just for myself, but for the communities and creatures I touched. I was Eleanor Vance, a woman who had navigated the depths of betrayal and emerged with her spirit not just intact, but vibrant and expansive. My life was a testament to the profound truth that even when everything seems lost, new horizons can always be found, and true self-worth is an unshakable foundation built from within. The abandoned textile mill, once a symbol of decline, was swiftly becoming a testament to renewal under my guidance. The initial phases of cleanup and structural reinforcement were complete, and architects were now finalizing designs for the mixed-use development. It was a monumental undertaking, but one that filled me with immense satisfaction. This project was more than just bricks and mortar. It was about rebuilding lives, creating opportunities, and breathing new life into a community that had felt forgotten. My work garnered significant local and regional media attention. Journalists, captivated by my story, the quiet millionaire who emerged from homelessness to build animal sanctuaries and revive forgotten towns, often sought interviews. I used these platforms not to boast, but to advocate for the marginalized, the forgotten elderly, the abandoned animals, the struggling communities. My voice, once silenced by societal invisibility and personal grief, now resonated with a powerful message of resilience, empathy, and the transformative power of a second chance. Miss Lee, true to her nature, spearheaded the community engagement aspect of the mill project. She organized town hall meetings, gathering input from residents on their needs and aspirations for the revitalized space. Her genuine compassion helped bridge the gap between my ambitious vision and the practical concerns of the townspeople, ensuring the development truly served their best interests. Our friendship, forged in a moment of vulnerability, had evolved into a powerful partnership, proving that genuine connection can blossom in the most unexpected places. The Havens continued their invaluable work, a vibrant hub of activity and unconditional love. The two sanctuaries were consistently full, with a waiting list of animals eager for their new home. The success led to the establishment of an outreach program, collaborating with other shelters to transfer senior animals who were at risk of euthanasia, ensuring they found their way to our safe haven. We even launched a foster grandparents program, pairing elderly volunteers with some of our Shire dogs, creating mutually beneficial companionship. It was a beautiful ecosystem of care, built on the simple principle that no one, human or animal, should be left behind. The ripple effect of my work extended beyond the local community. Other philanthropists, inspired by my story and the tangible impact of my projects, began reaching out. I was invited to sit on the board of a national foundation dedicated to elder care, offering my unique perspective on the challenges faced by older individuals, especially those experiencing homelessness or vulnerability. My experiences on the streets had given me a profound understanding that no amount of wealth could buy. It was a wisdom earned through hardship, invaluable in shaping policies and advocating for real change. My property portfolio, the initial engine of my philanthropic endeavors, continued to be meticulously managed by Mr. Sterling. His office now handled not just my personal assets, but also the expanding legal and financial needs of the nonprofit foundation and the mill redevelopment project. He had become more than just my lawyer. He was a trusted advisor, a silent partner in my burgeoning empire of good. He often remarked on my unconventional genius, a compliment that always brought a wry smile to my face. Amidst this expanding sphere of influence, I remained anchored to the simple joys of life at the Haven. Mornings still began with the happy chorus of barks. Evenings still ended with the peaceful sight of contented dogs. These moments were my constant reminders of the core values that truly mattered. The accolades and the large-scale projects were fulfilling, but the quiet nuzzle of an old dog, the grateful lick on my hand, these were the purest forms of reward. I often reflected on Daniel. The sorrow of his loss had transformed into a gentle, enduring love. I understood now that his efforts to help me, even when I didn't truly need it, were his way of showing affection and responsibility. His love was a strong, steady current beneath the surface of our lives, never wavering. He would have been proud, I knew, of the woman I had become. A woman who had found her voice, embraced her power, and turned personal pain into widespread compassion. My journey had been a crucible, melting away the old fears and uncertainties, forging a new, stronger self. The sting of betrayal, the harshness of homelessness, the quiet grief for my son. These experiences had not broken me, but shaped me. They had given me a profound appreciation for life's simple gifts, an unwavering empathy for the vulnerable, and a fierce determination to leave a legacy of love and opportunity. I was Eleanor Vance, not defined by what I had lost, but by what I had built. Not by who had tried to diminish me, but by who I had chosen to become. My compassion had become my greatest strength, creating a ripple effect of healing and growth that touched every corner of my world. As the textile mill revitalization project moved into its construction phase, transforming the derelict structure into a vibrant hub of commerce and community, I often found myself reflecting on the intricate threads of destiny that had woven my life. Each setback, each moment of despair, now seemed like a crucial knot in a larger, unforeseen design. The cold park bench, the public library, Miss Lee's kindness, Vivian's cruel betrayal, each had played an essential role in forging the woman I had become. My reputation for ethical development and compassionate philanthropy grew. The mill project, meticulously planned to benefit the local economy and provide affordable spaces, became a shining example of how business could serve a higher purpose. I personally oversaw details, from the ergonomic design of the co-working spaces to the choice of sustainable building materials, ensuring every aspect reflected my values. This deep involvement was a source of immense personal satisfaction, a tangible manifestation of my commitment to revitalizing what had been discarded. Miss Lee, now a respected figure in her own right, was celebrated for her innovative community programs at the Havens and her crucial role in the mill's social integration efforts. Our bond had deepened into an unspoken understanding, a friendship rooted in shared purpose and mutual respect. She often reminded me, with a knowing smile, that the universe works in mysterious ways, and sometimes, the greatest blessings are disguised as the harshest trials. The Havens continued to flourish, their success story resonating far beyond our mountain community. We had expanded our adoption services to a national level, coordinating with rescue groups across the country to bring senior animals to our facilities, giving them a final, loving home. The foster grandparents program had become so popular that we launched a satellite initiative, pairing lonely, elderly individuals in nursing homes with senior animals for therapeutic visits, bringing joy to both ends of the leash. It was a beautiful, symbiotic relationship, a testament to the universal need for companionship and love. One quiet afternoon, as I watched a group of our older dogs basking in the sun, a profound realization washed over me. Daniel, my son, his tragic death had been the catalyst for this entire transformation, a terrible wound that, through unimaginable pain, had opened the door to a life of unexpected purpose. Had he lived, I would likely still be living my quiet, unassuming life on Maple Street, my wealth a carefully guarded secret, my potential untapped. His absence, however devastating, had inadvertently propelled me onto this path, forcing me to confront my hidden strengths and embrace a wider, more impactful existence. This realization brought with it a complex wave of emotions: sorrow for his loss, gratitude for the love we shared, and an acceptance of the intricate, often painful, dance of fate. I knew, deep in my heart, that Daniel would have been incredibly proud of what I had built. Not just the physical sanctuaries or the revitalized mill, but the woman I had become. Strong, compassionate, unafraid to use her voice and her resources for good. I found myself revisiting our past interactions, seeing them through a new lens. His occasional frustration with my perceived frugality, his desire to take care of me, even his choice to let me believe he owned the Maple Street house. These were all expressions of his love, his need to feel significant in his mother's life. He hadn't known the extent of my wealth, but he had implicitly understood my desire for our relationship to transcend financial considerations. He had valued our connection, pure and unburdened by expectations of inheritance. In a strange, beautiful way, Daniel's spirit felt woven into the fabric of the Havens. Every wagging tail, every contented sigh of an old dog finding peace, felt like an echo of his own loving nature. He had worried about me, yes, but he had also instilled in me a quiet resilience, a core strength that had ultimately allowed me to not just survive, but to flourish. His legacy, though tragically cut short, lived on, not in material possessions, but in the countless lives touched by the compassion born from my journey. My private moments with the dogs became sacred rituals. There was a particular old border collie, named Shadow, who had a habit of resting his head on my lap, looking up at me with soulful, trusting eyes. In those moments, I felt a connection that transcended words, a profound sense of belonging and unconditional acceptance. It was a mirror to the love Daniel had given me, a constant reminder that love, in its purest form, asks for nothing in return. I continued to expand my philanthropic vision, always seeking new ways to empower the vulnerable and rebuild what had been broken. The fear of invisibility, of being overlooked, had been replaced by a quiet confidence, a certainty in my own worth and purpose. I was Eleanor Vance, a woman who had once navigated the shadows of destitution, now illuminating the path for others. My life was a living testament to the truth that even from the deepest wounds, compassion can bloom, resilience can triumph, and love, a mother's enduring love, can guide even through the darkest of times, transforming pain into a profound and lasting legacy. Years passed, each one adding new layers to the vibrant tapestry of my life. The textile mill, once a decaying shell, now hummed with activity, housing thriving businesses, a bustling community center, and even a small museum preserving its history. It was a place where generations met, where new dreams were forged against the backdrop of an honorable past. The town, revitalized, saw new families move in, new schools open, and a palpable sense of hope replace the old despair. I often visited, not just to oversee, but to simply sit in the town square, watching children play, feeling the pulse of the renewed community, a testament to what a second chance could truly create. The Havens, now a nationally recognized network of sanctuaries, continued to thrive, their mission unwavering. We had expanded to include specialized care for blind and deaf senior dogs, creating environments perfectly tailored to their unique needs. Our foster grandparents program had grown exponentially, becoming a model for intergenerational connection, bringing joy and companionship to countless elderly residents and grateful animals. The simple acts of kindness that had sustained me on the streets had blossomed into a widespread movement of compassion, a living legacy that touched lives across the country. Miss Lee, my dearest friend and steadfast partner, had eventually retired from the library, dedicating her considerable talents full-time to the foundation. We worked seamlessly together, our ideas flowing, our spirits aligned. She often joked that we were two old women building an empire of love, and indeed, it felt like nothing less. Our quiet evenings, once filled with shared silence, were now rich with reflections, planning, and the comfortable laughter of two souls united in purpose. My personal life, though still marked by the enduring absence of Daniel, was full and rich. The sharp edges of grief had long since softened into a gentle, ever-present love. I carried him not as a burden, but as a cherished memory, a guiding light that reminded me of the purity of unconditional love. The photographs in my office now included images of the thriving mill, the bustling havens, and a gallery of all the beloved animals who had found their peace under my care. Each picture was a chapter in a story of resilience, purpose, and the unexpected beauty of life's journey. I had grown to appreciate the intricate design of fate. Vivian's cruelty, though devastating at the time, had been the crucible that forged my new self. Her betrayal had forced me to shed the protective layers of anonymity and embrace my true strength, my capabilities, and my profound capacity for compassion. Without that painful catalyst, I might never have discovered the vastness of my own heart, or the true potential of my wealth to create a meaningful impact. Vivian herself faded into the background of my life, a distant memory of a past trial. I heard, through Mr. Sterling, that she had served her time, paid her dues, and was attempting to rebuild her life, albeit in a far humbler, quieter way. I felt no triumph in her downfall, only a quiet understanding of the consequences of one's choices. My focus remained on building, nurturing, and giving, not on dwelling in the shadows of past wrongs. My relationships with the animals at the Haven continued to be my greatest source of grounding. They were my constant teachers, reminding me of the simplicity of love, the importance of presence, and the boundless capacity for forgiveness and joy. Maxine, the golden retriever, had lived out her golden years in utter contentment, passing peacefully in her sleep, surrounded by love. Her spirit, and the spirit of so many others, lived on in the warmth and joy that permeated every corner of the sanctuaries. Looking back, The woman who stood on that park bench, invisible and broken, felt like a distant echo. The journey had been arduous, a test of spirit and will, but it had led me to a place of profound fulfillment. I had discovered that true wealth wasn't just in the properties I owned or the millions I had accumulated, but in the lives I had touched, the kindness I had spread, and the purpose I had found. I was Eleanor Vance, now in my late 70s, my hair a dignified silver, my eyes holding the wisdom of a life fully lived. I was a matriarch of compassion, a quiet force for good, and a living testament to the power of human resilience. My life was no longer defined by what I had lost, but by what I had built, what I had shared, and the enduring love that continued to guide my path. My legacy was etched not in stone, but in the countless wagging tails, the revitalized communities, and the countless hearts, both human and animal, that had found their way home because I had found mine. It was a life lived with honesty, courage, and a love that knew no bounds, a love that would continue to ripple through the world, long after I was gone.